Okay, so in this tutorial I want to cover some more basics of using the noise function, and I'm going to set up a short little example of kind of a dancing ellipse and talk about how noise generates its random number sequence. So let's go right off the bat and just jump in, create an ellipse. I'm going to put this at 200 on the screen. I'm going to type in noise, and noise requires some number, and I'm going to iterate through that. So I'm just going to create a variable name, and I'm going to create that variable here in a second. And let's just make this, 100 by 100, I guess is fine. Okay. So you can see I can't find that variable, so let's just go ahead and x off equals 0. And so right off the beginning, the number is 0 for this variable. It goes into noise, and it just stays at the same place. And also remember that noise generates a value between 0 and 1. So if I want to put this across the whole entire screen, I need to multiply that. So let's just say height. So this says generate noise from this sequence of numbers, this smooth random sequence of numbers, I'll call it. And we're going to start at 0. So this is the first generated number along that sequence that it's going to use. And we're multiplying it by height. So we get between 0 and 1 multiplied by the height, so it can fall anywhere between this range. So let's go ahead and play that again. So it's chosen that random spot. If I do this again, it will choose a different random spot up there at the top. Let's do it one more time just to illustrate the point. Now it's down there at the bottom. Right? So what noise does when the program starts is generate a full sequence of random numbers, metaphorically and somewhat figuratively. But for our purposes, for understanding it, think of it as having already generated a random sequence of values. And we just have to tell it how quickly we want to move along that sequence of numbers, and how and that will dictate how smooth or how jumpy the intervals are. Okay, is it hopping big giant big giant sections, and therefore we're going to get broader variation, or if it's moving along that line of random numbers very slowly, everything's going to seem nice and smooth. So let's illustrate that. So let's take the x off variable plus equal, let's just make it equal to 1. Alright, so you can see that almost appears to be like what random would do, though it seems to be in the center and smoother more so than all the way up here at the extremes. Still happens, but it's not like what random would do. So let's go ahead and modify this. Alright, so you can see with smaller intervals we get a smoother sequence of random numbers here. Alright, so let me go ahead and stop that. So let's create a second ellipse. I want to illustrate another point here. So let's make this one 400. So what we're going to do now is have two ellipses on the screen side by side. Now if we were to use random, and I said random height in each one of these, each time I call random, it would be a different height value. And I'm not going to go through typing that out. I think you understand that concept. But when we do noise, something interesting is going to happen here as we use this. Now they're both using the same x off variable, and they can be within the height. Let's go ahead and look at this. So you can see that the two of them are moving directly with each other the whole entire time. Right? They're matching each other. Because when the program starts, it starts with this noise creates this sequence of numbers, and we just move along that sequence of numbers. right? So if we pick the same spot, it's like a hilly race, like a race through the mountains. If we tell both ellipses to start at the exact same place on the course of random numbers, they're smooth sequence random numbers, they're both going to do the exact same thing. So the way to get around that is just to start at different places. So instead of starting at 0.001, or actually starting at 0, and then iterating 001, let's take this one and say, let's add 1,000. So what this is going to be, 0 plus 1,000 is going to be 1,000, plus, it's going to be 1,000.01, 1,000.02, and this one's just going to be 0.01, 0.02. So it's like saying this starts at the beginning of this sequence. It's exactly what it says. Start at the beginning of the sequence, and this starts somewhere further on down the line in that sequence that's been generated when I start the program. All right? So now you can see that these two values, these two ellipses, are moving similar to each other, but they're not moving exactly like each other, right? So they're moving along through this sequence of numbers at the same speed, the same interval. That's what this is doing. They just started at different places. All right? So it's important to keep that in mind when you're using random, or when you're using the noise function, that you're moving through the sequence of numbers. That's what using this variable x off and iterating through it allows us to do. So you're going to see maybe in a future tutorial how using variables in a for loop and resetting them each time allows us to create more complicated shapes. But we'll get to that one in another tutorial. All right, hope that helps.